We're back.
We're back.
Morning, man. We're picking up where we left off yesterday. And we got cut off around something in regards to, well, we were talking about how easily you could be caught up in not agreeing with other people. That was the point I was making at the end of it, that it's the nature of the times. So maybe with that awareness, we can refine what we're about, our approaches with others, and what the name of the game even is.
Right. Yeah. We live in divided times, and it doesn't seem to be an accident, as as we were noting, I suppose. You got the social media and the news and all that stuff, and where everything you run across is about how, a new way that you can disagree, with friends, family, coworkers.
Yeah, it's been in my lifetime, this thing I've been able to see where they made it everything. These things we disagree on, they made it so relationships are, have lived and died depending on if you are agreeing or disagreeing on these big topics. And it wasn't always that way in my first half of my life. It wasn't so divisive out there. And
Yeah.
I've monitored it for a while, man. And like I have it by date, how it all unfolded in my life. And so what am I getting at? There's like, now it's very important to be right and to be on the right side of information, and to believe you are believing in the truth. And there's other people over there that are dumb because they don't see what you see. And
Yeah, or I mean, the identity politics stuff, right?
yep.
Where if you don't identify with their identity, somebody's identity or whatever, well, that's a problem. I mean, you can't even talk to some people because they are so planted in some sort of identity that they didn't even come up with themselves, right? It was like handed to them or foisted upon them or whatever. Whether it's sexual identity, political affiliations, and things of that sort. It's nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then amongst those types, sometimes they're like aware and they're like just loud and proud. This is all I'm about. But a lot of times they're unaware that that's how hyper fixated they've created their life to be. And like we're observing it, like this is all this person's ever about. Don't they see there's more going on?
Right. One-dimensional kind of people.
Right. So where I was going was about just the facts, though, to set up, the idea why maybe you don't need to live and die off being right all the time. And if you want to have like good relationships with people, that shouldn't even be, it doesn't need to be your focal point. And again, but the times have made it so it's way bigger than we pretend it is, um, when it comes to why relationships are as they are with people. And all over the place, everyone seems to be dealing with the same the times are different, the relationships are different. If you are a type person, your friendships are maintained exactly as they've been for through the last 10 years. God bless. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's probably more of a rarity.
Yeah. No kidding, right?
That's where I don't know. It was on my mind the last talk, but we didn't hit it. Just that simple phrase, ignorance is bliss. Like, hmm, I don't know. It, I guess it's not relevant at this moment, but it was in my mind something, and we were talking about, and
Well,
well,
I think,
we were talking about the mechanics, and like, the person that doesn't understand flat Earth or this topic or that topic, but they know how to fix your carburetor, and
right.
you don't, and oftentimes maybe they're having great old time. Maybe these types that don't understand all these issues are having a blast, and all their friendships are just as good as they've always been, and it's just us, maybe some spiritual types looking at them and being like, well, you don't see the spiritual nature of things like we do, and therefore you're living life wrong.
That's right. Put the wrench down, buddy, and
And find
crack a book or
your
something.
alignment, your chakra.
Watch this video. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny that all the ways that I you could think of a ton of ways right off the top of your head, in which people are have become divided, these big so-called issues, that have just kind of blown up and are now just kind of like sucking the air out of every room, right? Like the identity politics and stuff with like sexuality and whatnot. But all those things, are they're all kind of theoretical things, right? They're not, you know, you can't fix anything. Like you can't fix a car, you can't build a house with any of those things. You might, you could learn all about all that stuff, right? 75 genders or whatever. But what do you do with that except, you know, point fingers, right? It doesn't create anything except for differences, divisions, that kind of stuff. I mean, it kind of leads nowhere.
Great point. Yeah, that is exactly what it is. It's theoretical stuff.
Yes, or something like, I mean, maybe there's a better word for it, but yeah, I mean,
I
it's
bring
not, it's stuff that has no application in any kind of practical sense, any real world sense.
right, and for a lot of reasons, we live in a day and age where everyone wants to teach everyone. It's just how,
Everyone's an expert.
yeah, and we have cameras and platforms to do so. So it's just how it goes, and people mirror each other. There's these professionals doing it, and people want to be like them, and it's just like this whole thing. Seems like
Yeah,
a route to go in life for people, I guess, these days. Like, and I love this subject. There's so much to talk about how the teacher audience relationship works, and how when it really works, it speaks for itself, and then when it's not working, it speaks for itself. But not everyone, I think, is seeing it like I am, I guess. But
right.
my dad is like an awesome. I'm gonna always bring him up, and he's a great teacher on some stuff, and he's an expert on some stuff. And sometimes he doesn't even recognize that is his thing. And like if he wants to be a teacher, those are his topics over here. And instead he gets caught up in this this theoretical stuff and bringing that into the conversation. And it's just that has never been how the great teachers have ever operated. They have honed in on their expertise. You know, they're masters of these things that they have something to offer about, and it's through experience. It's through putting in the time. Like it's never just some person that had an epiphany and now they're a great teacher. Like it's through the time and and knowing what you're talking about. And when we're talking about theoretical stuff, it's never the case. You can't know behind, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tune. There's some people with scientific, practical experiments going on and things, and I mean, it's not. But for the most part, people on the internet talking about some of these more divided ideas, yeah, they're not. Even our flat Earth stuff, that's why we're not. We understand that we have the awareness that like I don't want to carry us in too many different directions. I'm just going to give it to you if you have anything to say.
Yeah. Oh, back to me.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm going to go all over the place here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think, well, just the, just the vast difference between theory and practice, right? I mean, you got so-called science, like you just mentioned, which is all theoretical. And then like, our buddy Cody, on Instagram, right? He says there's no such thing as science, only engineering, And I've said, how much I thought that was a great, you know, statement, right? Because, engineering, you can build stuff, engineering goes somewhere, theory just kind of like evaporates into the, into the air, it just kind of, you know, um, it's like a wave on the ocean, it just kind of folds in on itself and, you know,
Uh,
uh,
this is great stuff. For me, take in first time
right.
hearing.
So, right. So I constantly have to rein myself in, when it comes to this stuff. The importance of like, you know, whether the Earth is a globe or the Earth is not a globe, or what just how fake history is versus like what you can say, is historical and stuff like that, or and but the thing is in real life encounters, stuff that happens like off the internet, um, you get a lot more traction, as we were kind of talking about, with people when when you deal with them in a concrete way, right? You listen to them, you ask questions rather than you know yacht flapping your gums or whatever incessantly and stuff like that.
Right.
Whereas most of the conversations, let's say like on the internet or the social media and stuff like that, it's all about shit that like it doesn't have any application outside of the chat room or whatever, the comment section, and the clever witticisms and jokes and insults always flying fast and furious and stuff like that. um, but I would say that like subjects that are kind of more obtuse or theoretical, of course, are they do have a use, in terms of like sort of broadening one's horizons and, understanding that, your education didn't stop, when you got a degree or when the teacher walked out of the classroom or when school was over or something like that, that it keeps on going.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, just like the, education in life, the experience and stuff like that, that steamroller keeps on rolling, right? I mean, you never know who's going to be in front of you next. And, you have to be prepared. And the best way to be prepared is not to be, judgmental and hasty and, a fucking blabbermouth and, just talking about yourself, people like that, there's nothing more boring, in my opinion.
No, mine
So
too.
that's not the way to be. I would think, it's not a
Yeah.
recipe for success. You don't win friends and you don't influence anybody. People can hardly wait to get away from you. And if you're one of those individuals.
Sales, bartending skills, 101, maybe this is 201, actually, you know, surf
Totally.
way to like annoy your customers is to talk about yourself the whole time. Like you have,
Right.
and I always
Right.
had guys around me, and that's all they would do. And I'd be like, dude, you ask them, and then you listen to them talk. Like that's how you get those better tips.
No kidding, right?
You don't, they don't come back when you just talk about your knowledge of liquor the whole time. So,
Right. Or your life or some incidental thing. Yeah, yeah. I think like, restaurant jobs, bartending, stuff like that, like, kind of the more humble kinds of positions in life, kind of the servants positions, if you will, are incredibly educational
they're like,
and really, yeah,
well, they're human nature stuff. They're low end sales jobs. Like I think the real great sales guys in the top in the exit, corporate world, they understand a lot the human nature stuff pretty well to make a big sale, how to
yeah,
start to finish, and how to win friends and influence people. You brought up there, that's like my go-to for last 4 years. If I don't refresh up on the principles in that book, I'll just revert back to like easily getting in little arguments or trying to be right about something and having to prove it. I'm a Capricorn, that's like a thing, like to be right. And it doesn't help me any with my relationships if I can remember these principles, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Say what you will about him, the information in there, like
yeah. No, I think it's solid stuff. I mean, and you can find it in many other sort of the sort of wisdom writers of the past and all that. So it's, of course, yeah, you can forgive him that he's a Carnegie.
all of these types of books. If you could, say this about the Bible though, you could say it about literally anything, you know. It's up to you to pull this or that from it, however you want to glean from these texts. And everyone does pull what they will. Maybe there's a teacher or a preacher that kind of makes them say, influences them to pull something. But the point is, I've gone through these like How to Win Friends and Influence People and the Laws of Success books, and a lot of these books covering the same material, and they seem to have some points that hit true to my life experiences and how I see things work out here. But they're also littered with like crap that like conspiracy minded people would be like, what? they're programming you to believe in this in space. Like they're always talking like sometimes the analogies or their parables are corny. They're corny. They're like, if you do it this way, you get the job and win, make big money and your life is great. Like that's how some of these stories play out in these books where they're trying to share this principle. But that's how the Bible works too. You could call those corny and like it doesn't always work like that. Like you could point at that all day long. Life does have gray area and things, but they're rules of thumb. They're,
Yeah,
oh, more often than not, when you play by these rules, you're going to see these results. And so,
yeah,
bring the whole thing together, like from yesterday's talk, we're talking about his like number one rule is just like don't criticize or condemn people. Instead, lavish them with praise and approbation. Like it's just the polar opposite of the whole route. Anyone that thinks they have better information these like last few years with the internet and everything is going. They're always saying first thing they're doing is criticizing you do this, well, it's wrong, and you should be doing this. And um
yeah,
so
that's right. You eat wrong, you live wrong, you know.
it was like 2020 for me. I delved back into that book and slowly but surely it's been reworking my whole, philosophy on any of this stuff, as well as other ideas have been coming through, like, whose ideas am I pitching here on my Instagram account and making this such a big deal over. So anyway, and I had to figure out losing my friends in real life and understand why not I wasn't a victim to knowing more than them having, and they didn't get it. Like, no, I alienated myself through bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean, I'm sure you could write a book as well as me, like we could write a book about, how to lose friends and dissuade people. Like, bye, asshole, you're wrong, you know, you need to learn something, you know.
yeah, I wish I didn't
Yeah,
laugh.
I've had horrible moments, where my fucking, ego or, having to be right, the joy of trouncing somebody. But it's a temporary kind of cheap gratification that really doesn't, it didn't help me, you know.
Well, it's always coupled with underlying like insecure feelings, like I did it, but you're always like, well, if the relationship's different now, or it's never gonna be the same. You're always
Or
like,
it's over.
I did it, but that was
Yeah.
should I have done it? Why didn't I, should I have just avoided that one? Which is again a rule of like of always avoid disagreement, argument. It's something people can't wrap their heads around. I know he's not your boy, but Owen Benjamin, you know, he's I hate to say, I'm a believer in Owen Benjamin. He did you see 8 Mile, which was the Eminem?
I have never seen that movie.
Well, he does this thing where in one of his rap battles, he airs out all his laundry first. Everything you could ever speak badly about him, he gets out first, and then it like the guy doesn't know what to talk about because he already aired out all his laundry. And to a degree, it's like Owen's doing that, and it's like people, there's nothing to criticize. Anything our group chat's ever said, you've ever said, like he is addressing it all. And uh,
Yeah.
lately, yeah, he's come full circle on some things, and it's driving some of his audience nuts because he's he's just off like the like Jew blaming for everything. And he's like we've been doing, shining a light on how these systems have come to be and why they are as they are to a degree. And if you want to do something about it, like it's anyways, where's my tangent? Why did I bring him up here? What was the very
Well,
next thing?
kind of beating somebody to the punch,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
but you know, they, you know, it's like they can level, you know, this or that criticism against you. But there's a line in Epictetus, you know, the Stoic philosopher or whatever, you know, that's exactly the same thing. It's like, you think these things, these various things are bad about me. If you had any idea of all the rest of my faults, it's like you have no idea how bad it gets, you know?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So, but I think it's all about, in that case, it's all about, presenting yourself as somebody who's, who has a great deal of like honesty and candor, and, is not some kind of bullshit type of person, who's just a bullshitter and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And, kind of like we were mentioning for a second yesterday, it's all about kind of like building credibility with other people, and that's not done, by being, playing like the blame game, or battering them over the head with all your facts and figures and stuff like that.
Yeah. When a little bit earlier when we were talking, we talked you talked against theoretical stuff being like we teaching point to a degree. We were saying practical stuff comes in better, but then you brought it around. But there's a time and place for the theoretical stuff. Having the
Sure.
idea you learned everything and there's nothing else to consider is not the approach either. And now
Sure.
tying it together to where, I think we should be, which is like you have to build something first with someone. If you were like, of the idea, maybe you want to introduce some ideas outside the box for them. Oftentimes a relationship, building, going about the other principles of building a relationship, which are just, it's not about you. It's not about your rewards. It's about just taking a sincere interest in someone else. And,
Right.
you know, going from there, that's usually received pretty well and good things happen if it's
Yeah.
sincere, not the fake, type of like flattery that can be usually sniffed out. But it's just something that it seems like some people get and have and do, just sincere appreciation for others, no matter what, without looking to get something in return. And other people don't understand that's like it's a building block to a good life. Being able to find that and do that in others with others. Sorry, I got a little.
Yes. Yes. Um, well, that approach, like, that gets a conversation going, right? And that's what I would think, is the more desirable approach, rather than being in being of such a way, where you shut down the conversation,
Oh yeah.
you know, and I, listening, being a good listener, asking questions, I, I found, in my experience, that's where it's at, even if, even if you don't make the sale, or you don't necessarily, become friends or whatever, it's good practice. It's good, and practice in terms of like, practicing for the next thing, always practicing for whatever is around the corner.
Yeah, it's just a good way to see things. But a Dale Carnegieism would be um one of his little corny parables is like this example of not needing to be right. So,
Right.
you're like sitting at the table and this person is literally spewing the wrong information and factual. You can cite, you can prove exactly where you're, you know better, and it's holding off and not saying anything about it. Like, um, that,
True.
that's more long-term thinking, seeing. That's
Yeah.
more, uh, just being, a little bit humility, whatever the term is, to not have to stir up a situation there. And that's the same approach like nowadays you gotta have going about life, because it's better. It's better to go that way. I don't have enough time to break all this down. We only have about
Well, no, but I mean, you're right. Because as you were pointing out at the beginning, we live in very touchy times. Everybody's very touchy about everything or a lot of things.
Mhm.
Maybe not everybody, but a lot. You can see those people coming from a mile away. The ones who are right stuck in their identity box or whatever. They're this, they're that. So, uh, like these kinds of approaches are even, they're like doubly, true when it comes to people who have sort of like come to roost, in their sexual identity or their political position or shit like that.
It's like there's so much. Maybe I don't know what the next combo will go into, but it's it's better to feel good and have good feeling relationships with your parents and your siblings and your community than to not. That's it at the
Yeah,
end. Like it, if you don't understand that, whatever. But that's my take. And if that's
yeah.
the case, now we have to reestablish and everything that's transpired in my lifetime, like I said, since the 90s, and how politically correctness and like being informed and taking sides on divisive issues have made it so that we're now all living in a world where we're not following good rules of thumb, good approaches to being with other people. And we are focused on being on these ideas, these divisive ideas first and foremost. And the world is hurting everywhere. Relationships are crazy and they're not what they used to be. And it's just okay. So again,
Certainly more.
what I just made, if you want the better way, which is good relationships, it's like the facts need to come secondary to humility and and I don't know what the term.
Well, the way I would put it is that you suspend your judgment.
Yeah.
You're neither for nor against, right? You leave open the door, you know, to go either way, something like that.
For
And that goes toward, that lends itself to, not pointing out how somebody is wrong or their foibles or their weak spots, the chinks in their armor, whatever.
yeah,
I don't know if it's humility. I've never really figured out what the hell that word is supposed to mean.
being human,
What's that?
being human,
Well, you're human by default, so
and truly
you're just stuck that way.
there's a better way to be human, but there's bad ideas out here. There's trauma and bad programming that make that confusing. But like maybe that's like the name of the game is like there is simply better these already written ways to go about life, to deal with differences, to deal with emotions that, a
Yeah.
bad emotion is what causes a bad action that affects another person, that and what emotional intelligence would be like learning, okay, the bad emotions do come. So you have the choice how you react to it. And
Right, right, you know,
if
which always kind of pisses me off. It's like, I don't want the choice, but uh, yeah, I mean, because I'm going to be, driving down the cursed highway, later on today, and somebody will inevitably, nearly kill me. Uh, and I have a choice, whether to, flip them the bird or honk the horn or, you know, brake check them if they're riding my ass or something.
what did what did your dad do when he caught a bad? What did your dad lash out like that, or
What's that?
did you learn that from your parents by any chance?
How to brake check somebody or flip them the birds?
Yeah.
Totally. No.
So because yeah, I mean that's the point. Like some perfect world where we don't learn, the bad ways to react to our emotions, uh, arguably could happen, even though it doesn't ever happen. And it seems crazy. But like, for example, you could rewire right now your feelings when that happens, and it will prove that you don't you're only doing that because you've learned it. But the thought tapping stuff, like the Callahan technique, where
I don't know it.
I mean, it's the same as probably Reiki. It's the same as all kinds of people's
Uh,
things. But no, no, I shouldn't say that. It's probably the same nearly fringe pseudoscience type of stuff. But I have seen it be effective for me. And there's ideas that these points you press on, you tap, are
no,
wiring, and you do it in these certain patterns.
no.
You can rewire your neural pathways, that. So you basically do it. It's yeah, you do it to limit stress, to lower your heart or whatever. If you have anxiety, these things are why the stop tapping is effective. But you can also totally rewire, yeah, fears. People, it's for people that can't fly, they can't do things, and they literally
Oh,
rewire their thinking on it, and
oh,
they
yeah,
can get over the phobia. And so
that's interesting.
I did it once coincidentally, and there's like two things that I found it really effective where I was like, you know what, it just worked. Um,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna bring up the one thing, but the second thing was like me getting pissed off here in Kentucky because uh people ride your tail on these like 20-mile country roads, and it's like neither of
Right.
us turn off, like just put 20 yards in between us, like
I know, right?
why,
Jesus.
why not? And so I would like tend to like think I need to like return